vintage sand.
Hello, hello, hello. Almost under a new administration, it's Team Vintage Sand. That would be John Meyer, Michael Edmond, and yours truly, your humble narrator, Josh Cabot. Very nice to be back. Very nice to be back under a nation hopefully returning to some sanity. And very nice to be returning to a topic that has been actually, guys, the subject of some of our most popular episodes in the past. Our last three episodes were very serious. We did the double episode on race and film, and our last episode was on American political film. So now we're dipping back into the Danny Peary well. Danny Peary, one of our favorite film writers, author of cult movies and several other great books on film, who published in the early 90s a book called Alternate Oscars. And in that book, he would offer what won and his selections for what should have won, whether they were nominated or not. And so far, let me see, I think in episode 8, we did the 1980s. In episode 13, we did the 00s. And in episode 21, we did the 1950s. And today, so in a sense, the whole 25 other episodes have been leading up to this because you guys are such 70s people. So today's episode 26, Alternate Oscars, the 1970s. And I want to just let the audience know that in my conciliatory and, working across the aisle kind of mode, we've tried to keep foreign films out of this before, but you guys insisted with some reason.
I did.
So, yes, and so this time for Alternate Oscars of the 70s, we're going to allow foreign films. And so Bergman, Herzog, Fassbinder, Wenders, Truffaut, Romer, Cabral, Buñuel, Bertolucci, Pasolini, Fellini, Weir, Kurosawa, you're all invited in. And it's going to be a big tent. Your moment has arrived. Why do you, aside from your own personal experience, because you're that age, why are the 70s so critical to you?
Go ahead, Michael.
I just think it was a time when there was so much creative freedom allowed. The studios were kind of collapsing in the 60s under these ridiculous, musicals and big, overblown, gigantic mega.
You don't like Paint Your Wagon, Michael? No?
I don't like Paint Your Wagon.
Big budget movies to compete with TV.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's still some of that in the 70s, and some of them unfortunately became nominees, which I find appalling.
Yeah, like Fiddler. I was looking back through in preparing for this. I mean, the musical of Fiddler, the film of Fiddler is fine, but it's 3 hours long, and it's no Zero Mostel. And I'm like,
he's
really?
miscast. He's 34. Why would you have a 34-year-old Tevye?
Yeah, not buying it. And of course, the other thing was that because of this confluence of circumstances that Michael's talking about, and the fact that, films like Bonnie and Clyde and Easy Rider were successful when no one in Hollywood thought they would be, and the studios kind of collapsed, they realized they had no idea what they were doing, and they said, hey,
right.
Why don't we just throw a couple of $1 million at the kids coming out of film school, let them do something, and the worst, we're at a couple of million, so what? And you get the American New Wave, the French way, the French New Wavers were so influenced by our film, and now this boomerang's back, and our film school directors, who we're going to talk about all evening tonight, were so influenced by Truffaut and Godard especially, and for about 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, it wasn't the entire decade because things started to change the year of Jaws.
Exactly.
Because then the emphasis on the big weekend blockbuster started to happen. What was the revenue for that opening weekend?
Exactly.
There were still good movies.
Yes.
But from 69 to 75, maybe the first time since late silent movies, the directors were the ones with the power and the voice. And then it just went back to the way it always was, the money people. That's when you had the rise of Michael Eisner and Michael Ovitz and CAA and the agencies and putting packages together. And as Michael said, the big box office gross on the weekend. And a lot of people cite that as the decline of, but for a brief golden moment there, the directors ran the show, and it was an incredible period. You know, De Palma, Scorsese, Lucas, Spielberg, Ashby, Altman, Coppola, who kind of owns the decade. Plus,
really?
we have to some point do an episode on the 70s new wavers that didn't ultimately succeed, but still did interesting stuff, like Bogdanovich, like Friedkin, like Bob Rafelson, who's showing up on my list today, like Jim Toback, people like that. And as you say, John, you know, Jaws sort of marks, it's kind of unfair. Jaws is actually on my list.
Jaws is a good movie. Jaws is a good movie,
yeah.
but the phenomena of that stupendous opening weekend started to happen, and then the producers, the executives at the studio started to emphasize, oh, that's what we have to start going for, because then Star Wars happened too. It's a year later, right?
But wasn't Godfather the first film that was released in over 1,000 theaters?
Not at first, no.
Oh, is that right? Okay, I didn't know that.
It was slow. It was limited release for about 2-3 weeks, and then it went out.
And then it broke big. Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way,
when it opened though, it had huge lines.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because
every theater just
because the book was
block.
very popular, so
you know, this deserves it just so happens that for me, in going through the 70s, that I think is the only year they got it right. I argue with every other choice except 1972. So let's dive right in, shall we? So 1970, the winner was Franklin Schaffner's Patton. You know, obviously a script by Coppola and a very memorable George C. Scott performance. What do you guys have as your Oscar winner for 1970 for Best Picture?
MASH.
You're going all Altman.
Of the group that was nominated, Patton, Airport, Five Easy Pieces, Love Story, and MASH, I think I would have voted for Patton because it's the movie I enjoy watching again of that group. MASH, I think has some really great moments, some nice scenes, but what the hell is that movie about?
It's about hating the military.
No, it's about Vietnam. It's about Vietnam.
Military.
Yeah, it's about Vietnam, but telling it through Korea.
Oddly enough, the book wasn't.
Well, yeah, because it's definitely not about the Korean War. That is for sure. Although Altman always insisted it wasn't about Vietnam. That had nothing to do with that.
He insisted, but they certainly marketed it as such.
I think I think some of it works really well, and some of it doesn't. I think the part with the football game, it's funny, but it's a different movie. It's like a Mel Brooks movie all of a sudden.
Yeah, or The Freshman, you know, or Horse Feathers, you know, just kind of stick the football game in there.
Yeah, I thought it went well. My problem with Patton, and I only have one problem with it. I think it's a good movie. I think Scott is brilliant and it's well directed. But with the exception of Patton, all the characters in that movie are less than one-dimensional. I mean, was Omar Bradley boring?
Yeah, no, I kind of agree, yeah.
And look at Field Marshal Montgomery. He's a cartoon character.
Montgomery's a hard character to pull off well in movies to begin with because he was a really eccentric person to begin with. And I think they kind of emphasize that too much because they want to make him memorable because he has such a small part. He's only on screen for a few moments.
But I thought all the other characters...
I have to say, my favorite movie of that year is Little Big Man.
We don't have to stick to nominees, so go for it.
My favorite movie of that year is Little Big Man.
Very underrated and underseen. Why is that never shown?
I don't know.
I don't know. It used to be there was a period it was on every so often. I haven't seen it in a long time.
And it did well when it came out, I believe.
I don't know.
I think
so. And maybe Hoffman's best performance?
Yeah. And
he's excellent. Everybody's excellent in it.
And it only received one Oscar nomination for Chief Dan George.
Yeah, weird. Maybe it was just too disturbing for people. They just we don't want to go there with that subject. Get out of here.
I mean, for me, For me, it's almost a tie. I'm going to ultimately go with Five Easy Pieces because, and I am not an insane fan of Jack Nicholson as an actor. However, I don't think any film better captures that post-Altamont end of the 60s ennui, for lack of a better word or an English word, that film does. And it's just the directionless kind of energy going out in all directions. Also, I just love the open end. It's one of my favorite open endings of all time, where he just abandons her at the gas station and hitches a ride to God knows where. And it kind of reminds me of a much better version of the last line of Easy Rider, which is "We blew it."
Well, the ending is sort of a metaphorical suicide, because he says he's going to Alaska, and he says it's going to be cold there, and
it'll be cold as hell, right?
Like,
and he doesn't even have a coat. Yeah. But
I like the film. It's not my favorite Rafelson. I prefer the
King of Marvin Gardens.
Yes.
I like that movie. Yeah.
Which
that's
came out
what we
in
got to remind people of.
My favorite year, as we did on a previous podcast.
That's right. Our favorite. Yours was 72 and John's was 74, right? I went back to 1960.
And 71 was a close second.
The other film that I would throw in there is, in terms of its influence on filmmakers, if not the general public, was The Conformist.
The Conformist actually opened in New York in 1971.
Oh, all right.
That's
good.
what I was going to ask about that.
And I have that for 1971.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
March.
Okay.
It did play at the New York Film Festival in 70, so you're technically
I know.
right,
It makes
Josh.
it very confusing.
So for 1970, for Michael, it's MASH. For John, it's Arthur Penn's Little Big Man. And for me, it's Rafelson's Five Easy Pieces.
And I have a couple movies that I just want to throw in as sleepers. The Landlord, which is Hal Ashby's debut.
I love The Landlord.
Right. And the first time I ever saw Eric Romer, My Night at Maud's. Which
Yes.
New York Film Critics for Best Screenplay in beautiful black and white.
My favorite film by him, absolutely. So that was not the best year of the 70s, but a very good one. All right, looking to avoid our 2-hour episode of last time, we'll move skippingly on to 1971, where of course the winner was Friedkin's French Connection. John, you start us off this time. What's your pick for 1971?
Of the movies nominated, I would go with The Last Picture Show.
Same here.
Yeah, I mean,
oh my God, do we agree?
The movies nominated are The French Connection, A Clockwork Orange, Fiddler on the Roof, The Last Picture Show, and Nicholas and Alexander.
Oh my God, turgid movie.
Terrible.
Of the movies nominated, I'd go with The Last Picture Show, but my favorite movie of that year is The Conformist.
If Conformist is 71, I can definitely
movie.
see that.
Michael?
I have a definite feeling about The French Connection. I like to put in a little personal.
Go, Michael, go.
About The French Connection. When I was in the 11th grade, I went to a boarding school in New Jersey. And almost every weekend we went to Princeton. And there were 2 movie theaters. One would show kiddie matinees and one would show adult films. And for 4 months, they showed nothing but The French Connection, which I must have seen, I would guess, between 6 and 8 times. Now, here's the thing. I hardly remember a thing about that movie, even though I saw it so many times. I think it had that great editing scene.
Under the Train.
But it's just, I think it's a fine cops and robbers movie. It kind of glorifies police brutality. I think Hackman is fine, and it's kind of a one-note performance. But I just did not see. Even then, I didn't see.
Yeah, I think it's a good movie. It has good New York City atmosphere at the time. It's kind of short on characterization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Roy Scheider in it. Roy Scheider is very good.
Yeah. I do too. Yeah, actually, I kind of prefer Scheider's performance to Gene Hackman in it.
Well, he had a more interesting character.
Yeah.
Well, and my personal connection to French Connection is that if you watch closely in the chase scene, that's under the 86th Street elevated train in Brooklyn. And the school where I first taught for 6 years, the first 6 years of my career, Lafayette High School, you'll actually see it a couple of times pass in the background. And the projects, the apartment buildings where he lives, where the sniper shoots at him and kills the woman with a baby carriage, is the Marlborough houses, which is where so many of my students came from.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's right out there. But the baby carriage, that's what I remember.
Yeah, that
It's a
scene I
wonderful
remember.
moment.
Oh yeah, the car chase. No, it's one of the great so-called car chases of all time.
It is.
No doubt about it.
Absolutely. But that's all I remember. And I
That's
saw
all
the
there
movie
is.
6 times.
It might
But
have also been your experience at the boarding school that you blocked out a lot of that.
It could be, but
It was
I
zero
have
for
listed it.
conduct.
Okay, I have listed, and I'm of course not going to say it in our podcast, but I'd like to send it to Josh to put it on the website. 24 films that I thought from 1971 that were more memorable than The French Connection. And I'm not going to, the only ones I'm going to mention are the top 2. And John has already said The Conformist, which is a brilliant movie. And my favorite, the favorite is John Schlesinger's Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Fantastic movie. Again, underseen.
I think it's as a gay man, I find it's a very important film because it's the first film that treats a gay relationship the same as a straight relationship. And
without comment or without editorial.
If anybody hasn't seen it, it doesn't show much. It's brilliantly acted. It got 4 nominations for actor Peter Finch, who's never been better. Glenda Jackson is actress, director, and original screenplay.
Glenda Jackson won, right?
No, she won for Women in Love the year before.
She won for
Jane Fonda won that year for Clute.
For Clute, which
is on my list
also
of the 24
just
films.
a good movie, Clute. Good movie.
Oh, is that a good movie? So for me, either nominated or I'm not even distinguishing. Last Picture Show is my favorite movie of that year.
Of 71?
I hate to say it, but Peter Bogdanovich, go back to episode 7 when we watched the new Orson Welles film that Bogdanovich had such a big hand, and he's possibly the most obnoxious human being in the world, and had a.
No, you should. He has the podcast with TMC. Some of it's pretty interesting.
I know he's brilliant.
I can listen to it.
I mean, his book on John Ford was probably the first great American book about a single director. I mean, he's a pioneer. But after that incredible, first of all, I love Targets, the film he did for Corman with Boris
Never saw it.
Wonderful. And then Last Picture Show, and then What's Up, Doc, and then Paper.
I don't like What's Up, Doc.
I do.
Oh, I do. I like What's Up, Doc.
I think it's okay, but it's just.
And after that, Daisy Miller, and At Long Last Love, and a string of some of the most horrifyingly bad movies this country has ever produced. It couldn't happen.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah. Oddly enough, the sequel to Last Picture Show wasn't bad. Texasville.
Well, the book was good too, and McMurtry worked on it as well. But of course, the story you guys know was that his wife and muse basically Polly Platt, when he made Daisy Miller, he had worked with Sybil Shepherd, of course, on Last Picture Show, and dumped Polly Platt for Sybil Shepherd to make Daisy Miller. And as soon as he dumped Polly Platt, his films went into the toilet. So coincidence, perhaps? Maybe I don't know. So but regardless, there's not much new to say about Last Picture Show. It holds up. I watched it again for this. It's so beautiful. And every performance.
Oh, it's an excellent movie. Depressing as hell.
But every performance is real and subtle, and Ben Johnson and Cloris Leachman deserve their Oscars. One of my favorite last lines, she's Cloris Leachman's with Tim Bottom. She's like, "Never you mind," and then that pan down the street and the movie theater is closed.
I also liked Ellen Burstyn. That was my first.
Sure. I mean, so many great people in that.
Jeff Bridges. That was his debut film.
Yep. I hate to throw anything Bogdanovich's way, but 71, it's Last Picture Show for me. Mike, what about you? Can you choose between, for 71?
Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Sunday Bloody Sunday is yours. And
although
John,
Conformist is as good a movie.
Oh, yeah. John,
I was just watching it last night. I think it's so good. It's Bertolucci at his absolute best.
Oh yeah, it's his best movie.
Easily.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100. There are so many images. God, this design of the film. Storaro was his cinematographer, I think. Spectacular. Yeah. And John, you're going with Last Picture Show as well?
Well, of the movies nominated, that's what I would choose. My favorite movie of that year is The Conformist.
Interesting. And my favorite Altman films that year, McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
That's on my list of 24 films as well. I'm going to send them to you, Josh.
No, I'll put it up on the website.
Yeah,
and
I mean, there are some movies, that was Clint Eastwood's debut film, Play
Misty for Me. Yep, fabulous.
Harold and
also Harold and Maude, and I'm going to throw in Polanski's Macbeth, which aside from Branning's Henry V, I think is the greatest adaptation of a Shakespeare play on film. Just tremendous. And
also for classical, there was a King Lear, Peter Brook's King Lear with Paul Scofield.
I have not seen that.
Oh, it's bleak as hell.
It's a nice, happy play, though.
But and do you ever see?
I'm waiting for Lear, the musical.
And then Michael Corleone's
poke your eyes out.
Michael Corleone's film version of Euripides, The Trojan Women,
which I have not seen either.
Katharine
Those are
Hepburn, Genevieve Bujold as Cassandra, Vanessa Redgrave as Andromedy, and Irene Pappas as Helena Troy. It's surprisingly good, and it did no business.
I can imagine, but those are. I don't know if those are out in major DVD or Blu-ray.
I have it on. I have Trojan Women.
It's funny. These are all movies that, for a long time, the whole retrospective theaters, when they were thriving, they used to show all the time.
I miss the revival theaters. I know. Sorry to sound like a cranky old person.
No,
but
I do too.
I know you guys do too.
No, and the good ones had such a variety of films too.
Well, all right. So we move on
to the next year.
1972, and as I said before, I don't think there's any competition. I think it's one of the great American movies. It's a very American story, and that, of course, is Coppola's kind of out of nowhere success, The Godfather. I'm sure when it came out, everyone thought it was going to be a disaster. An untried director, not very famous cast, and
I don't know.
Not only that, but it was a fairly low budget, and throughout the whole movie, they were thinking about firing him.
But I think once Paramount saw the final film, they knew they had a winner.
Oh yeah,
the way they released it was like, this is something.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, is there a movie made in this country that has wormed its way into our collective consciousness any more successfully than Godfather? It's epic. I'm very excited about. Have you guys been reading the articles about his re-edit of Part 3?
I've heard about it.
I've heard about it. Yeah, it's going to be released in the theaters, isn't it? When theaters open.
Someday.
I mean, I don't know if it's another one of his schemes just to sort of make a little bit more money, or if he's really improving the movie.
No, well, I think he's unlike most.
The ending is going to be changed, I think.
Oh, good.
Right. He's a real tinkerer. I mean, he's released new versions of Apocalypse and Cotton Club. He kind of one of those rare directors who sees his films as works in progress, which I kind of accept. I think it's a
Chaplin was like that. Chaplin used to do that all the time. He'd see the movies, and then he would go back and reshoot scenes. It was like a painter constantly modifying the painting the way he worked.
I agree. So are you guys with me on Godfather?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The only other film that I would mention from that year, although there were once again a lot of good movies in that year,
Yeah.
But the one that I kind of have on my upper list, along with The Godfather, which is like the best, it is definitely the best movie to ever win the Academy Award for Best Picture. For me, no
Possibly.
question.
I don't know if I can argue with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's the movie that won the foreign language film of that year, and that was Buñuel's The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie.
I could surely
It's the only
see
other
that.
one I would mention, but I still would give it The Godfather. No hesitation.
And the only other one is also a foreign film is the first great film of the German Neue Kino, Herzog's Aguirre, The Wrath of God. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Which is so stunning and forward-looking in it. And I think, if you want one image that sums up the insanity and the folly of colonialism and imperialism, it's that last scene on the raft with the monkeys and his daughter who he wants to marry and start. I mean, he's lost his mind, literally. It's very Heart of Darkness. And I think that is one of the most stunning images ever in a film. And it's a great, great movie, and kind of announced this new wave, him and Fassbinder and Wenders, that the Germans were coming. John, anything you would add in?
You were talking about, how The Godfather is in our collective consciousness. Can you name a movie that is quoted more often?
Casablanca.
Yeah. Wizard of Oz.
Possibly.
And Wizard of Oz.
I mean, because The Godfather, I remember there was, when a long time ago, it was re-released and I hadn't seen it in a while. And I realized by the ending, it's like, my God, almost every single line in this movie is famous. It's amazing.
And yet I know people who don't like it. I have a filmmaker friend who does not like The Godfather, but loves Godfather 2.
Well, I love Godfather 2 also, but...
Yep. But I mean, don't you think that's a little odd?
Yes, I think it's very odd.
Although, Godfather 2 has different ambitions, and, the jumping back and forth in time is such a powerful...
Well, also the fact that he had a much bigger budget for that, too, and more freedom. That made a big difference.
And Godfather 2 kind of really seals the deal on the American story, because we see Vito emigrating as a child. And it's that the ultimate American success story, but the dark flip side of it. So,
right.
All right, we are all in agreement that they got it right in 72. And I don't know about you guys in the audience, but I would have a hard time arguing with Michael that Godfather Part 1 is not the best film that ever won Best Picture. I think that's a pretty solid...
I can't think of anything better.
Which brings us to 1973, and
I can think of better.
Me, kind of unwatchable, The Sting. I loved The Sting when it came out.
It's fine.
I think it's a good movie. It's entertaining. Every once in a while it shows. I start watching it. I enjoy it. I will admit that of the movies nominated, that's what I would vote for.
Oh, not me. I'd vote for Cries and Whispers.
I know. I like Bergman a lot. That happens to be a Bergman film I do not care for.
I'm with you on that, John. But I certainly understand why people like it.
To me, it's sort of like Bergman saying to himself, I really have to make a Bergman movie this time.
All right. So I'm honor bound.
But my favorite movie of that year is Mean Streets.
Is Mean Streets. That's my number 2 for that year.
What's your number 1?
It's amazing, isn't it, John, how Scorsese emerges. I mean, he directed a couple of other small films for Corman before, but it's amazing how Mean Streets it's like, being born full formed. All of Scorsese is there already. It's just ridiculous how good that film is. I one of the reasons I didn't choose it is because Scorsese's coming up for me later on in the decade. But my number 1 is the film that we have cited along with Citizen Kane and Boys in the Hood as the greatest debut film of an American director. I'm going with Terrence Malick's Badlands. No, Michael, huh? No, I wish everyone at home could
I don't love it. I liked it when I saw it. I just don't love it.
But Badlands can't be seen. None of Malick can be seen on a small screen.
I saw it when it came out.
No, but and you didn't like it at the time.
I thought it was good. I had a problem with Sheen in it, actually.
See, I liked
Really?
him, and boy, did I love
Oh,
her.
I think
didn't care
she's
for him in
excellent.
it.
That image of her twirling
Well,
the
it's-
baton on the lawn
character
is
is
iconic.
No, his performance I didn't think was quite, it was uneven, I thought. I have a couple of honorable mentions.
Wait, so what's your top choice for 73?
Well, definitely Cries and Whispers of that
Cries
year.
and Whispers, okay.
But the film version of The Homecoming, Harold Pinter's The Homecoming, directed by Peter
Oh yeah,
Hall,
that's a good movie.
is as good as Pinter's you'll ever see on screen.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Oh, I have it, Josh. I'll lend it to you.
All right.
It's like 4 or 5 of the original cast members of the original Royal Shakespeare production.
Guys, am I misremembering? Or it's really interesting that in the 4 years we've talked about, we've mentioned a lot of fairly unadorned film versions of plays. The early 70s seems kind of like a golden era for adaptation of drama.
This was the American Film Theater.
Right.
That
Yes.
Sure.
subscription, which I saw, and most of them weren't good. Delicate Balance was not very good. It was the Katharine Hepburn show. Iceman Cometh was pretty good, but it's all 4 hours. And but the Homecoming, I think, knocks it out of the park. And there's a movie called The Offense, directed by Sidney Lumet with Sean Connery, that I'll mention during the necrology.
I don't know that one.
You don't know
I
it?
knew.
It's not many people do.
An American
That's
release? An American
No,
studio?
it was the British.
Huh.
But he directed it, but it was British. It was him, Trevor Howard, and Vivian Merchant, one of her 8 movies. And I think it's Connery at his absolute best. But I don't have a copy of it, and I was hoping that Turner Classic would have shown it on their tribute to Connery, and they didn't.
Speaking of Lumet, that's also the year that Serpico came out.
Serpico, which
Yes.
I don't like Serpico.
I like it. I don't think it's a great movie.
Powerful story, though.
Yes.
It's a good story, but I don't know.
And
I remember at the time
also
not liking it.
73 is also one of the best Bogdanovich movies, is Paper Moon.
Moon. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye.
Yep. We've talked about that before in reference to neo-noir. How about The Last Detail?
Yep.
Oh yeah, good movie.
Fabulous Ashby film, great Nicholson performance. American Graffiti was 73.
That's right. That was one of the nominees.
Yep, as it should have been. I saw it at a drive-in over the summer in a double feature with Grease. It's the only time I've been to a movie since February, and it was lovely. It was a great experience. I know. I was 13 when Grease came out, so you'll have to forgive me.
I saw the musical, the stage musical in previews, and I thought it would close on opening night. That shows you what I know. Wrong again.
I could have invested in that one.
Exactly. One other film I want to mention.
Springtime for Hitler and Germany.
Michael, you now own 56% of Grease.
One other film I want to mention from 1973 that isn't well known, that got a couple of nominations, is a movie called Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams. And this was written by Stuart Stern, who, as you know, Josh, wrote
Rebel
Without a Cause. It's Joanne Woodward, middle-aged woman dealing with a tragedy in her family, and I think it's Woodward's best performance. And it was a film I found incredibly moving. Andrew Sarris, I remember at the time, said it was the best American film of 1973. Except Woodward.
Is it easy to find? Is it on?
Turner has it often. I have a copy.
Yeah, I was going to say, it shows on Turner Classic Movies every so often.
And Joanne Woodward and Sylvia Sidney got nominations for it. It's Sylvia Sidney's only Oscar nomination. And I remember at the time being incredibly moved by it. And it's not well known. Woodward got the New York Film Critics Award for Best Actress for it. But Andrew Sarris was a big supporter of that film. That's how I
do remember the Oscars for that year. And when they had mentioned, I forget if it was for Glenda Jackson.
It was
winning.
Glenda Jackson.
And you saw Joanne Woodward say, "Was so bad."
Everybody was just shocked that she won for A Touch of Class. Which is a movie I've never figured out the appeal.
Was Day for Night 73 here?
74.
74.
But it won the foreign film for 73.
Right, and then Ingrid Bergman beat Valentina Cortese for supporting, and Ingrid Bergman said, "You gave it. Why did you give this to me? I didn't deserve it."
Yeah,
I remember that. And I also, and I'm, as a Julie Christie fan, I thought you were going to mention Don't Look Now.
I have that down.
Yeah, which
Absolutely.
is my favorite Nick Rogue film.
I like it more now than when I first saw it.
And I'm going to throw one last foreign film in there. My only mention of Spain, anyway, is Victor Arice's Spirit of the Beehive.
I'm ashamed to say I've never seen it.
Just stunning, beautiful, odd, wonderful film.
I've never seen it.
Almost like the female. It's about these two young girls, and they become obsessed with Frankenstein, with the Frankenstein movie, which they see. And they're kind of orphan living. It's really real. I saw it at BAM at a festival once, and it was just really grabbed. I don't know anything else about Arice's work, but that's one to look at. And I'm also sorry, guys. You know I'm the genre person. I'm throwing in The Wicker Man, the Edward Woodward, Robin Hardy Wicker Man. That is one of the most disturbing horror films without being overtly violent I have ever seen in my life.
Well, what about The Exorcist? What about The Exorcist? I don't understand.
I don't like The Exorcist.
I don't either.
I don't either. I wish I did.
I don't find it terrifying at all.
It was such a phenomenon when it came out, too.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Well, and so that brings us now to 1974, and any other year, and I think you guys may be with me on this, any other year they would have been right in giving it to Godfather Part 2, which is, as I said, in some ways, is more epic in the vistas it covers than Part 1, because as I said, the intercutting of Vito coming here as a child and building his empire with Michael and ultimately with Fredo and Cuba, and it's just spectacular. I can't give it to Godfather Part 2 in the year of Chinatown.
Yep.
Sorry. Can't.
I would have given it to Godfather 2, but if Chinatown won, I'd be like, well, yeah, okay, because I think Chinatown they are both on my list of the great American films. Like, I think they're both just amazing movies.
I mean, I think in our recent memory, there was one, maybe, and you may argue with me on this, I think 2007, when both No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood came out. When's the last time we had two movies like that? I know. You guys don't
like either film.
No. Tough crowd, man. Tough crowd.
Sorry.
So I would, John, you're going to keep it with Godfather 2. I'm by the slightest of fractions giving it to Chinatown, because as we said in the politics episode last time, Chinatown is this country. Noah Cross is the ultimate American creation. And every performance, every twist, every turn, Robert Towne's script, the way it was shot, changing the ending to make it a Polanski ending. I don't usually like Faye Dunaway, but she's incredible in it.
She's excellent in it.
And Nicholson again. I mean, Nicholson is just invaluable.
I think it's the best work of either Nicholson or Dunaway.
So, Michael, where do you stand on this? Godfather 2 or Chinatown? Yeah.
Chinatown. And I do like Godfather 2. I've got a little problem with one of the performances, Michael Vigasso.
In the beginning, he gets better as the movie goes along. And I think, and part of the problem, too, is the fact that he was such a late replacement.
Right. And he really wasn't an actor. He was a writer and a teacher.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But that's a slight problem.
Did you like Strasberg?
I do like The Godfather Part 2. I like it much more as I've gotten older. When it came out, I was more disappointed.
It's interesting because the first time I saw it when it first came out, I loved it.
Yeah, I think I was too influenced by Vincent Canby, who panned it.
You know, Vincent Canby was
Often wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
He's the poor man's Bosley Crowther, which you don't want to be in life.
no, I
No,
think
Godfather
actually
2 is
Canby was better critic
Godfather
than
2 is a
Bosley
very,
Crowther.
very rich film. There's
It
just
is.
there's so much in it.
I can't disagree. I would pick Chinatown. I also happen to love Day for Night, and that's for that year.
Absolutely.
You know.
And I'm as other films, I'm going to throw in another one of the German films, my favorite of the Fassbinder films, and one that has turned out to be incredibly prophetic, which is Ali, Fear Eats the Soul, about the older German woman who ends up with a younger Muslim man, and the family's reaction to it. And as Germany wrestles with this migration of non-Germans, especially Muslim non-Germans, into the country, and you're seeing the rise of the far right again. Fassbinder, as always, about 40 years ahead of his time. I'll throw Parallax View and The Conversation in there.
Yeah. And the Conversation is one of the movies that was nominated for Best Picture, and it's a great movie. Yeah,
which surprised me because I liked it a lot, but it was such a it was not a financially successful film.
No, and I can see why.
I think it stayed in Minneapolis for 1 week. I was lucky enough to catch it.
Yeah.
And when it got Best Picture, I go, oh, yeah, really? I want to put in a couple of foreign films that I like a lot. Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage.
Sure.
Which, as I explained to you guys before, was declared ineligible for Oscars because
it was originally a TV series.
Movie came out the year before, some quirk in the Academy rules.
Have you guys seen the original TV series?
Yes.
No, I have not.
It's much better than the movie.
It is, but yeah, the same thing with Face to Face, which comes up in a couple years. But it's still extraordinary. Showtime's, HBO is making an American series out of it.
Oh, really?
Interesting. Really?
Yeah, I think it's Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain.
Nice.
Yeah.
Two of my favorites these days.
And the other one, Lacombe Lucien. Louis Malle.
Yep.
I think that's a marvelous movie.
Which, along with Au revoir les enfants, which he did in '87, his two sort of Holocaust films. Why is he always forgotten?
I don't know.
When we did the '80s, we talked a lot about Atlantic City being ignored in '81. I just saw, because I'm doing a virtual film society and we're doing the French New Wave, so I just watched Elevator to the Gallows.
I just saw it a few months ago on Turner.
Isn't that a wonderful film?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And, my favorite thing about that is Miles Davis improvising the entire soundtrack in one take. Everyone comments about Truffaut and Henri Decaille as cameraman doing Paris in 400 Blows, but Mal was doing it the year before. He's always forgotten. He's never at the top of the list anywhere.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. Because he made some American movies that weren't considered great, like Damage.
Wait, didn't he make Pretty Baby too?
And Pretty Baby, yeah.
Yeah, that was not so good. But, all right, so 1974, when will we ever see a year where you have two films as good as Godfather 2 and Chinatown released in the same year?
Yeah, like I said, they're both in my top 10 of great American films.
That's amazing. And remember, for I think it was episode 4 or 5, we did our favorite years, and not for nothing, John's favorite year was 1974. Which makes a ton of sense to me now. On we go to 1975 and Milos Forman's adaptation of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I like a lot, but it's not my winner. John,
same here. I like it a lot too, but it's not the movie that I would go with.
What's yours?
I think it's just okay. I had read the book, and I thought the book was hysterical. I thought they sucked out a lot of the humor from the book, and also the play, which I saw later.
Right.
And frankly, Louise Fletcher is quite good as Nurse Ratched, But to me, she seemed more like a misguided social worker than an evil nurse.
Oh, I don't, and there's a series now called Ratchet on
Yeah, have you watched
Netflix,
it?
is it? I haven't seen it yet.
I
No,
haven't
based
Netflix
on that character.
with Sarah Paulson.
But she has, you guys know I'm an insane Star Trek fan, and of the Star Trek series, my favorite of them is Deep Space Nine, and Louise Fletcher plays a character who is very much, and she's like a holy person, ostensibly, who eventually sort of becomes the Pope figure, and she's horrible, that evil just under the sweetness and the quiet and the calm. She's what makes Cuckoo's Nest still watchable for me.
It's amazing how many actresses turned down that part. Colleen Dewhurst, Anne Bancroft, Ellen Burstyn, Angela Lansbury.
Really?
All turned down Nurse Ratched.
Well, my 1975 is easy for me. And again, if you read, and for those of you who are interested in this period out in the audience, the book for my money to read about this is Peter Biskind's Easy Riders, Raging Bulls.
Yeah, it's an excellent book.
Tells the story of the rise of the Hollywood New Wave and their rise and ultimate fall. And Biskind puts a lot of the blame for this transition we were talking about from directors being in control to the money people taking power again. Jaws is still my pick for 1975.
Really?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, first of all, I was 10 years old when it came out, rather impressionable.
Second, so you were scared out of your pants.
You bet. I was up near a lake and we didn't go swimming, and people tried to talk me into it for weeks that sharks can't live in fresh water, and I refused to believe it. I just did not believe it. But
gosh, you weren't alone. I went to Europe that summer, and I was at the Cannes beach, and I wouldn't go in the water.
Yeah, it was, and I think it's still, and I'm not a huge Spielberg fan. I think it's a perfect film. I don't think there's a miscast. Lorraine Gary is not great, but that's kind of a thankless part. I think a lot of the credit goes to Verna Fields, remember, because his editor, because when the shark was looking so terrible, she was the one who said, hey, you're making a William Castle horror film, make a Hitchcock film, and don't show the shark until 3/4 of the way in. And when you do, it's astonishing. And for me, I know it's a cliche, but I'm going with it anyway. The scene that separates this from every film like it, and there are tons of films like it, is the USS Indianapolis scene, which Robert Shaw improvised. Because till that point, these were three interesting, mismatched people. But when they bond, and Robert Shaw tells that story of being in the water, that true story about the USS Indianapolis, delivering in the bomb, the Hiroshima bomb. And it's just, and all of a sudden, we really care about those people. And when the shark attacks again, we don't want them to get hurt. Whereas, cut to almost 20 years later in Jurassic Park, which is obviously a much better film technically, but I found that I didn't give a damn who lived. They could kill Jeff Goldblum, Laura Dern, Sam Neill, the kids, Richard Attenborough. I don't care. I didn't care about anybody. So
it's interesting, the Indianapolis scene that you're talking about. I always loved because the Richard Dreyfuss character and Robert Shaw, they do not like each other. But when he mentions the Indianapolis, suddenly Dreyfuss, his whole demeanor changes. Like, you were on the Indianapolis. Like he's like, oh my God, I know something else about this person. No wonder. And all of a sudden, you can see how he's really interested and starts to like him.
And it's a scene that absolutely does not advance the plot, the hunt for the shark at all in any way, but it completely makes that movie. And you ever look into a shark's eyes, John? Dead eyes, like a doll's eyes. My God, Robert Shaw is so easily overlooked. But and that's just by a whisker, because I am also putting in, although now it's so politically incorrect, by a whisker, Jaws beats The Man Who Would Be King, which I saw with my dad when I was 10 years old when it came out. There's Sean Connery again. And the story is so offensive now in terms of its Kipling colonialism. But my God, that was the first time a movie really absolutely pulled me into a world that was not my own. Houston did such a good job in creating that world in the middle of nowhere, in the mountains, in the desert. I was just completely captivated by it. So, but its politics and its characterizations are a little hard to take now.
Yeah.
So I'm going with Jaws for 75 by a whisker over The Man Who Would Be King. Mike?
Well, you know what my answer is.
We all know what yours
We
is.
all know what Mike's.
I've talked about it enough
ago.
on the other podcasts. Robert Altman's Nashville
Of course.
is. I still was shocked when it lost in 1975, and I got to say too, in the nominees, I prefer both Barry Lyndon and Dog Day Afternoon to both Cuckoo's Nest and Jaws. Jaws is a good movie. It's not my kind of movie. I don't generally like monster movies, and that is kind of a well-made
me
monster
neither.
movie.
I totally agree with you. And
I remember it was showing years later. It was showing. It was. I was at my uncle's for Thanksgiving, and they were all watching it after dinner or before dinner. And I went into the other room. I just thought I really don't want to see this again. Maybe it says more about me than it says about the movie. I will give you that. This is why I can't be a film critic.
And it's also such a huge improvement on the novel. I immediately went and got the
that
novel.
I agree. I did read the novel.
Oh,
and I thought the
crap.
novel is
it's terrible. But you want to talk about an ambitious film about what America means. You can't do much better than Nashville. That's for sure.
Yep. And a couple other films of that year, Amicord. Fellini's last really great movie. And I just want to mention Amicord.
Picnic at Hanging Rock, anybody?
That's 79.
No, that's Last Wave was 79.
Are you sure?
Picnic at Hanging Rock was released in Australia in 75. I don't know if it was
Well,
released.
that could be. I didn't see it. It didn't come to Minneapolis till 79.
Yeah, well, Minneapolis.
I have a story for our next.
Is that the same year Casablanca was released in Minneapolis?
No. When we get to 76, I have a tiny story to tell you, which really makes me look rather pathetic.
My favorite movie of 75 is Barry Lyndon. That is my favorite Kubrick movie. It's one of the movies that Kubrick did that I can watch over and over again, and I find it just extremely beautiful, but it's all subjugated to the story, the way it's shot. And there's something about that character that pulls me into that movie, and I get extremely involved. I know some people just hate it, but I love it.
I hated it when I saw it in 75, and now I've since seen it again at the Film Forum, and I love it.
And boy, you want to talk about a film that you absolutely should not bother with on anything. I mean, Barry Lyndon on a small screen, even a good-sized flat screen TV, you don't get anything close to the experience of seeing it. I mean, if you see it on TV, you're going to be like, my God, I hate all these people. I don't care about them. It's so long. It's so dark. But my goodness, on a big screen, it's a religious experience. I agree, John.
Yeah.
Anything else to mention for 75? Oh, I've got to mention Monty Python and the Holy Grail. There, I had to say it. It's not going to win any awards. But you want to talk about an influential movie and a quotable movie. I could recite the whole movie for you.
Run away!
Keep running!
I want to mention a dark horse movie that people don't know about. Joseph Losey's The Romantic Englishwoman with Glenda Jackson and Michael Caine, and a screenplay by Tom Stoppard.
Wow.
Very good.
It's interesting that Losey is not really well known here anymore, and I don't know if that's because he doesn't deserve to be, or
I think he
missed something.
I think his movies that they did with Harold Pinter doing the screenplay are extraordinary. The Servant, The Pumpkin Eater, and The Go-Between, which is on my list of 24 films in 1971.
The Servant is really, really good.
Yeah.
Great. Interesting. So that may be a topic for an episode. Someone needs to resuscitate Joseph Losey's reputation.
I would definitely. I really like him a lot. Everybody thinks he's British and he's from Wisconsin.
Well, he left the country because of the
blacklist.
Right, and he did The Boy with the Green Hair, and he did the remake of M here, right? And then and then out. All right, 1976, Rocky. I know you're all going to agree with Rocky as the choice for Best Picture.
Oh my God. Look at the nominees that year. All the President's Men, Bound for Glory, Network, Taxi Driver, and Rocky. To me, it's like a test, which doesn't belong.
I mean, it has become sort of a cultural touchstone, certainly, but it's easily the worst of those movies. There's no doubt.
I dislike Sylvester Stallone so much. I remember when that movie came out, this was after I saw it, him doing a Playboy interview, talking about Brando, saying he doesn't like to be compared to Brando because he doesn't think well of him as an actor or as a human being. And I thought, screw you.
Come on, Sly, seriously.
And to this day, I've only seen 2 other Stallone movies.
You haven't missed much.
That's what I've been told.
The one that he was great in was Copland.
Didn't see it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of like that. It's pretty good.
And as we've mentioned before, I really enjoyed the first Creed movie, and I thought he was very understated and nicely.
I thought he was playing Burgess Meredith.
Well, that's not easy.
But I mean, it was the same movie practically.
Well, at least you didn't play Burgess Meredith as the Penguin.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, Burgess Meredith and Burt Young were the only one thing I liked about Rocky.
Listen,
I will say I think Rocky's it's a good movie. It's entertaining, but it's not in the same. It's not in the same class as All the President's Men, Network, and Taxi Driver.
No, and I think who steals Rocky is not even Burgess Meredith, but Carl Weathers, who I had never heard of before. Who plays Apollo Creed? He's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's sort of the Muhammad Ali figure. But
yeah.
I can tell you, we were talking before, I'm from Staten Island, and I don't know if our audience has heard about the bar that's refusing to shut down because of the masks. And
that's what I was bringing up before.
All the conservatives on Staten Island. I have to tell you that I remember going to see Rocky IV, the one where he fights Ivan Drago, the Russian, in Staten Island. And in the last fight, I swear to God, everyone in the audience got up. This was 86, so before the Cold War ended. Everyone got up and was jumping up and down, yelling, "Russia sucks! Russia sucks! Russia sucks!" These are my people, and I love them.
I missed that one.
So
and all the other Rocky movies.
Mine's very easy for 76. I am going to I'm going to go with a nomination, and for me it's Taxi Driver.
Okay.
Talk about a film that it has become part of our cultural language and just completely unexpected, and put De Niro over the top, and just beautiful. It still holds up, still is terrifying. There's a reason that it was ripped off so obviously and brutally for Joker last year, because it still has so much power. So Taxi Driver is easy for me in 76. What about you guys?
Mine is All the President's Men by hair. I mean, I admire Taxi Driver a lot, but I would go with All the President's Men. I like it more and more each time I watch it.
And for me, it's a tie.
Oh, boo! No ties.
All the President's Men and Network, which is a movie I like more and more every time I see it.
Really? I mean,
Network.
Yeah.
Network is so far ahead of its time, of course, in its view in the media. I just, as I've said before,
prophetic.
But the writing is very much, I know you like Holden, and Mike, we've talked about this before, but
yeah,
very speechy. I don't find that, except for Holden, there's no real people in there. It's Chayefsky using them as mouthpieces.
I think you have a point. I like the movie a lot, but I think you have a valid point.
It doesn't bother me, the speechifying.
Well, you can see the whole movie is satire.
Yeah.
So that's sort of why it works.
And if you agree with Mike, go to your windows, open them up. Hey, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to listen to this podcast anymore.
They're all throwing their computers out the window.
Exactly.
Oddly enough, my younger friends, most of the movies of the 70s, they don't like most of them, but they do like Network.
Interesting. Well, again, my
Yeah.
God, I talked about Facing the Crowd last episode, and that's the only other film that even comes close to Network in predicting what was going to happen with the media and the power of the media being twisted in all the wrong ways. All right, so we come to 1970s.
No,
Oh,
stop. I have a little story. There's a couple
we
of
got a
movies in
1976 story.
76.
That's right. Go, Mike.
Face to Face, Ingmar Bergman, which is about a psychiatrist who tries to kill herself, and Liv Ullmann gives a fantastic performance.
Always.
It opened in New York in April of 1976. It did not come to Minneapolis until October of 1976. However, it came to Chicago in August, and I drove one day,
Yes.
7 hours. And remember, this was when the 55-mile speed limit was imposed. I drove 7 hours to see that goddamn movie. Got up at 4 a.m, got there about 1 o'clock, saw it, had lunch or dinner, and went back. That
devotion, my
how
friends.
nutty I was as a movie nut.
And especially as a Bergman fan.
And a Bergman fanatic. I just didn't want to wait anymore.
It's a good thing you like the movie.
A few films from that year that I also just want to mention that I really liked. The Shootist, which is John Wayne's last movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
John Siegel. It's really, really good. The Front, which John mentioned last.
Yes.
In the Politics Films episode. Yep. Very good.
And the Next Stop, Greenwich Village.
Mazursky.
Oh, yeah.
Mazursky's
Yeah. Good movie. Paul Mazursky.
And I'm going to throw in, sorry, being the genre person, I'm throwing in Carrie. I'm a De Palma hater generally, but I'm throwing Carrie in.
I do like Carrie. It's one of the few De Palma movies I do like. Because after Carrie, I kept going to see other films he made and was ultimately disappointed.
Don't get me started. I've told you guys, the only film I ever walked out on was Body Double. Ever. In all the films I've seen. It was such a pathetic Hitchcock ripoff and so misogynist and disgusting. I was like, okay, I'm out. This guy's a sick bastard. But I came back for Untouchable, so there you go. And then it went all downhill from there. So to 1977 and Annie Hall, which is very hard to argue with, but I'm going to argue with it. But that's only because I'm 10 years younger than you guys, so I think that's a hit of what I'm going
Star Wars?
Uh-huh. Guys, all apologies to the cinephiles out there. I know George Lucas, except for graffiti, is nothing of a filmmaker. I was 12 years old, and my uncle and aunt took me to see it at the Aviation Mall in Glens Falls, New York, and it completely changed my life. Absolutely. I'd never seen anything like it. I know what it did to the industry. I know what it did to Lucas's career, who, had he not gone that way and gone with more graffiti style films, might have been a really great filmmaker, but it became sort of the inverted pyramid, from which everything else sprung out. I've liked some of the sequels, hated some of the sequels and the prequels, but I've never had and I had to be 12. And I
enjoyed it when I first came out. I liked it, but of the movies nominated, I think I'd go with Annie Hall.
I have no problem with that, obviously.
I actually think Annie Hall was the best movie of that year. It wasn't the best year of the 70s. Star Wars, I
do like Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes.
It's good.
Not seen enough.
I don't like it as much as Star Wars. I know it's a very different movie.
Yeah.
But I do like it. But I think Annie Hall, it's funny how it's considered Woody Allen's greatest movie and kind of one of the top comedies, because I don't know if it holds up to that. It is very funny. I would like to have seen the 3-hour movie he originally made that he cut down.
Well, I think supposedly the editor said to him, "This movie isn't about what you thought it was going to be."
Yeah. It was mainly about him.
Yeah, and he said your real movie here is about her.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that was brilliant. And she, she's never been better, and that's saying something because she's given a lot of
She
performance.
also had another good performance in a movie I hated that year, called Looking for Mr. Goodbar.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
she was great in that, but oh God, I don't want to see that ever again.
It's compared to the book, it's not a good movie. It's really Richard Brooks kind
Well,
of.
not only that, but it had such a puritanical.
Yeah.
It was like
The book was less so. I mean, was the same story, but she was very, very good. A couple of other films I want to mention. Louis Buñuel's final film, That Obscure Object of Desire.
Absolutely on my list.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Robert Altman's Three Women, which
Brilliant.
I think is really one of his most adventurous movies. I really want to see that again. I haven't seen that in a long time. One of my favorite sports movies came out that year, Slapshot.
Slapshot, yes, the Hanson brothers, yes. Woo-hoo.
I love that movie. And oddly enough, all my hockey-loving friends in college hated that movie.
Of course they did.
The Charlestown Chiefs, the Hanson brothers, come on, that's amazing.
I think it made too much fun of the violence of hockey. And one other film that I happen to love that the critics didn't is Aline Renee's first English language movie. I think it's his only one to date. Providence. Have you ever seen it?
I've never seen it. I've always wanted to.
It's not on DVD. It's
I know.
I think very, very good. And actually, John Gielgud did wind up winning the New York Critics Award for Best Actor. It's a very odd movie, but at the time when it came out, I thought, wow. And I at that time, I had not seen any Aline Renee of his films. I hadn't seen Hiroshima.
Or Marienbad, or
at that point, I was only
Muriel, yeah. Well, and I have to throw in the film that obviously I didn't see when I was at. I should tell the audience that John and Michael and I met when we were working in the 80s for the R.R. Bowker Company, and one of the things we worked for Subject Guide to Books in Print. You may be old enough to remember those volumes in your bookstore or your library. And for a couple of years there, when I was there, we got to handle movies too. And I remember we spent so we'd get a list of movies and we'd have to put them into categories, genres or whatever. And I remember spending 2 hours trying to figure out where to put Eraserhead, which is 1977. Now, of course, I didn't see Eraserhead. I was 12. I was not going to go see Eraserhead, but I became a huge fan of it in midnight movies. You know, when I got a couple of years older, they'd show it every month or so.
Eraserhead's great.
Nothing like it. One of a kind. And I have been a David Lynch fan for good and for bad ever since. So
he's had a lot of good. He's had a lot of bad.
And he has. Yes, he has.
I mean, Dune. Oh my God.
Well, but he did Dune as a way to get the money for Blue Velvet. That was a for hire job. But look at Elephant Man, which everyone forgets.
Elephant Man is great. Blue Velvet is great. Mulholland Drive
is great. I love Wild at Heart.
I don't care for Wild at Heart.
I'm surprised by how much I still like that film. And of course, just the first season, not the remake, not even the second season, but the first 7 episodes of Twin Peaks are as good as anything I've ever seen on television. Absolutely.
I agree with you there, Josh.
I throw Eraserhead in there for 77. John, anything you want to add for 77?
That actually is one of the movies I was going to bring up.
Yes. All right. Which takes us to the year I think is probably the least interesting of the 70s. I was working really hard. In 1978, Cimino's first film, Deer Hunter, won. I would say deservedly. What's that, Mike?
It's his second film.
Oh, right. What was the first?
Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
Thunder with Eastwood. Yeah. Right.
74.
Correct.
And
of course,
Bridges is in it.
Became notorious for the failure of Heaven's Gate next, but Deer Hunter still holds up. I was looking through other films for 78, and I didn't find anything.
I don't like Deer Hunter much. I didn't then. I recently watched it on TV, and there are good things in it, but I don't care for it. Out of the nominees, I like An Unmarried Woman.
Sure, Jill Clayburgh.
Jill Clayburgh, which it was funny. Almost everybody I knew, including women, men, older women, younger women, hated that movie. I was the only person I know who liked that movie. But it did get nominated for Best Picture. I do want to bring up a movie that I happen to love that came from 1978 that isn't well known. It's a movie, and I got to give it a little history of it. It's a movie called Stevie, directed by Robert Enders.
With Glenda Jackson.
With Glenda Jackson and Mona Washburn. Now, here's the story behind it. It opened up 1 week in Los Angeles in 1978 to qualify for Academy Awards. Mona Washburn won the New York Film Critics, the LA Film Critics Award for Best Supporting Actress. I don't know if you know who she is. She was the housekeeper in My Fair Lady, and she's Billy Lyre's mother. Very good character actress. And then they got Golden Globe Awards for Glenda Jackson and Mona Washburn. And then the film distributor went out of business.
Huh.
And the movie totally disappeared. I did not see it in 1978. Fast forward to 1981, and the Samuel Goldwyn Company picks up the distribution. It winds up for 2 days at the Thalia Theater, Revival Theater here in New York. And a double feature with Mr. Forbush and the Penguins. That and Stevie.
Wow. That works.
Vincent Canby reviews it, raves about it. It has a 4-month run at the 68th Street Playhouse. Glenda Jackson and Mona Washburn win the New York Film Critics Award, but of course it's no longer eligible for the Oscars. It was eligible for the Oscars in 1978. But this is my favorite movie of 1978. It's, and you can see it on YouTube. That's the only place you can see it, I checked. And it's about the poet Stevie Smith. Were you familiar with her work, Josh?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, she's not someone who's taught much, but yes, I know her.
I never
work.
heard of her. But 75% of this movie is Glenda Jackson speaking directly into the camera. And it's her, Mona Washburn as her aunt, Alec McGowan and Trevor Howard have small roles. It's just an incredible, incredible movie, and it doesn't seem stagey. And I just love this movie so much. And I wish people, if you do see it, go to YouTube, want to watch it, go to YouTube, but be sure to Google it as Stevie Glenda Jackson. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of Stevie Nicks.
You don't want that. John, anything to
well, I actually would vote for The Deer Hunter for that year, and I think it's a really great example of great acting saving a not so good script.
I would agree with that.
I think
totally.
I think this. I mean, the movie is a little bit uneven, but I think there's also moments in that movie that are very powerful and very moving. And I know there was some controversy about the film when it came out. I don't really think this movie is about Vietnam. I think it's just generally about the horror of war, about the whole of mythologizing and romanticizing war, and then they go and find out, oh, it's not what I thought it was.
But very good performances, and it felt very real.
Everybody in it is excellent.
Yeah, and it was sad because that movie came out after John Casalia died.
Yeah, that was his last film.
Yeah.
And the only other film that people don't know, I don't even know if it's available, is Fingers, with Harvey Keitel, James Toback's film. Have you guys seen that? Yes.
Yeah, I know that.
That's an interesting film. Not a fan, John?
I don't know if it's I'm just thinking if it's available. I don't know.
It probably isn't.
Probably is not.
Most
but
of his films
Toback is someone who should have been Scorsese or Coppola and just never was, just kept tripping over himself and made some films, but Fingers, and also one of the great Harvey Keitel performances in that.
Yeah, he's wonderful in it.
Yeah, I recommend tracking that down.
I want to mention one last Bergman movie, and it's not one of his best.
Autumn Sonata?
Autumn Sonata, just because how great Ingrid Bergman was.
Yep, the two Bergmans working together.
I would agree. It's not a great movie, but she is superb in it.
And this was her last film, theatrical movie. She only did a TV film as Golda Meir right before she died.
Right, I remember
but
that.
Bergman is so good in it. And I just have no, I think it's one of really the finest performances I've ever seen on film.
All right, which brings us to our last year. I totally know, I think I know where you guys are going. You probably know where I'm going. But I would say that 79 is the worst choice of all. There's a reason that Kramer versus Kramer is not shown anywhere anymore. And it's all the more remarkable that it won, considering that there are some, boundary-defying, consciousness-raising movies that came out that year. So many of them, I don't even know where to begin. But John, kick it off. What's your choice for 79?
Oh, the movies, Apocalypse Now.
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
I don't have to think about it at all. Even though there's other movies that came out that year that I like a lot, but I would go with Apocalypse Now. I
am 100% with you.
An amazing movie.
That boy did Coppola own the 70s, right? The two Godfathers, Conversation and Apocalypse. My goodness, that's a pretty good decade for a director. But yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Apocalypse Now has only grown and grown and grown in stature for a reason, and I think it deserves it. And we're not even talking about the film that I think that Mike is going to choose, because that's right behind there. Mike?
Yeah, well, of the nominees, I would have gone with Breaking Away.
Lovely film. Lovely film.
Very, very, I guess my favorite sports movie of all time, if you want to call it a sports movie.
And it's about cycling. All right.
And it's about cycling, yeah. And Apocalypse Now, I disagree with you guys. I think it's 3/4 a great movie. Every time I watch it, and I have a copy of it, whenever Dennis Hopper comes on, I have to turn it off, because he is so totally awful in this movie.
But he's hardly in it.
He's in it enough. And I'm not crazy about Brando in it either.
I know. Mike, let's face it, you're an errand boy sent by grocers to collect a bill.
He's just a curmudgeon.
But my favorite movie of 1979 is Manhattan.
Of course. I knew that was coming.
I think it's definitely Woody Allen's best movie. It's aged well.
Even with the May December romance there, to put it gently.
Yeah, he had a 17-year-old girlfriend at one point. So did Chaplin. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not going to condemn the man. It was part of the movie. And frankly, if you watch the movie, it doesn't really say this is really the best relationship. Because it's clear, that there are problems with it. And he makes jokes about how he could beat up her father. I think Marion Hemingway is wonderful. She's never been better.
I don't love Michael Murphy in it.
He's fine.
He's
for
just
that
fine.
kind of role. It's the Tony Roberts role. I guess he wasn't available.
Exactly. And Keaton's great. Van Gogh,
and
like
Keaton
an Arab.
Great. And Streep in her tiny part is great. And apparently she did not like working with Woody.
Interesting. I love, and boy.
But I just love every shot, every note.
Gordon Willis's highest moment.
It's Manhattan is on my list as one of the best American movies ever made.
This city never looked better, and Gershwin never sounded better, and it's again the romance makes me a little bit uncomfortable now, knowing what we think we know allegedly, but it doesn't take away from me from the impact of that film. It's just, boy, from Annie Hall to Crimes and Misdemeanors, there were a couple of missteps, but those 12 years. That was a major role for him.
I thought he made some actually high on my list of Woody Allen, and we could do a whole podcast on it. Well,
he also, he was making a movie every year too.
Yeah,
he was turning out a lot more movies than everybody else.
Right, which is good if you're talking about Zelig, not so good if you're talking about a Midsummer Night's Sex comedy. So there you go.
Ooh, that's a bad.
You haven't seen the last Woody Allen movie I saw was booed at a SAG screening. Wonder Wheel.
Oh, well, we're not talking about his post-Crimes and Misdemeanors work.
I loved Deconstructing Harry. I think that's actually his funniest film. And I like Bullets Over Broadway very, very much.
Yeah, I like that.
And
Don't speak.
I like Vicky Cristina Barcelona.
Yeah, I do too.
I know, but in that sort of golden period, I mean, my goodness, Zelig and Broadway Danny Rose and Hannah and
Zelig.
Stardust Memories and especially, and I've mentioned this before, the film that has risen the most of those films in critical esteem is Radio Days.
I love Radio Days.
In some ways, is maybe one of the best 2 or 3 films he ever did. And then my favorite,
it's his Amarcord.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And my favorite film of his is Crimes and Misdemeanors still. But so any other I have a lot of 1979 films.
I have a few.
Go, Mike. What do you got?
Okay, I love Being There.
I like to watch.
Well, it's funny, when I saw that movie as a 24-year-old college student, I thought, I don't see what the big deal is with Peter Sellers. I thought he was fine, but I just didn't think it was that difficult of a role. And now that I've taken maybe 15 to 20 years of acting classes, I understand now why that is such a heralded performance. He's brilliant in it. The whole movie, I think, is just wonderful. I think it's the last really good Hal Ashby movie, unfortunately.
Yes, that's right.
Billy Wilder's last good movie is that year, Fedora.
Fedora, that's right.
Which didn't get any kind of a release. It was literally.
No, it kind of came in. It's a good movie that kind of came in.
Yeah, United Artists just buried it. They didn't know what to do with it.
The 70s were not kind to Wilder.
No. And for a musical, I love Hair, the Milos Forman.
I liked it when it came out. I rewatched it not too long ago, and I got like maybe halfway through, and it's like, this really isn't very good.
Really? I haven't seen it in a while.
I don't know. It just doesn't.
I'm actually in it.
It's very glossy looking. It's
really.
I remember liking Treat Williams though. That's the first time I think I'd seen him. He was good in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to him.
And that was the year I saw Picnic at Hanging Rock.
There you go. But the Peter Weir film that was released that year is my favorite Peter Weir film, which is The Last Wave.
Last Wave.
Oh,
yeah, that was pretty good.
Devastating movie.
I wish they'd cast a different actor than Richard Chamberlain.
I know Richard Chamberlain, but the whole idea and the Aborigine thing, and the idea of it's stunning work. And his next film, no, I'm going to take that back. Gallipoli, his next film, is my favorite film of his. But what happened to Peter really Weir? My goodness, what a great director!
And I liked 10 very much, which was sort of a sleeper.
I saw it. I was just, I was 14, so I was looking at Bo Derek.
You didn't understand middle-aged.
I sort of vaguely understood Bo Derek, though, I want to say, in my own defense.
John, what about... Moore was a last-minute
the movies, we haven't mentioned at all Norma Ray, which was one of the movies that nominated.
Thank you.
I think it's a really good movie.
It's a very good movie, and also I just want to point out that Martin Ritt was snubbed twice in the 70s for Best Director. Sounder was nominated in 1972 for Best Picture, but he was not nominated for Director. And Norma Ray was nominated 79, not nominated for Director. And that seems wrong.
Yeah, I know.
Martin Ritt's only Oscar nomination was HUD, and he which is a great movie, but he did a lot of good movies. And he's terribly underrated.
Well, speaking of sports movies, since you mentioned Breaking Away, a so-called sports movie that came out that year that I like a lot is North Dallas 40.
Yes. Very smart, very funny film.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's really good. Might be the best football movie.
I would go with you on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Baseball makes good movies. Football, no.
And it never comes up. You never see it.
Well, and honestly, guys, again, I'm going genre on you, but we haven't mentioned the film from '79 that probably has had the most cultural influence, even more than Apocalypse Now, and that is Alien. To me, Alien was just.
I know it. I know it was like a big deal and everything. I don't like the movie.
I walked out on it.
Really?
I walked out when the monster popped out of John Hurt's stomach. I said goodbye, and I was by myself.
God.
I hated
No,
that
but-
movie, and I didn't see any of the others.
But that was one of the first time. Well, the others, Scott didn't do the others. I mean, Cameron did Aliens, which was it was more like an action film. But this was, first of all, hello, Sigourney Weaver. Welcome to our universe. Oh my God, was she amazing. And how nice to see a female hero in a sci-fi action film.
Yeah.
Second of all, that was one of the films where I really first understood what a director did. Because there were moments where, you know, there's this thing on the ship and it's quiet and you're over the shoulder following someone and the music builds and the person turns the corner and the thing's not there. And you relax for a second and then bam, the creature comes in from behind and you're like, oh my God, oh my God. And it was really one of the first films where I understood that what a director did could really impact. I mean, again, I was 14. So it was
a very, very successful film, Josh.
Oh yeah. That's why they kept making them over and over again.
Yeah.
Much to their
franchise.
Diminishing returns. Aliens was fine, which Cameron did in '86, but Alien 3, which was Fincher's first film, and Mank is coming out tomorrow night, guys. We're going to watch Mank tomorrow night. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it opened today.
It opened today.
That's right. I'm so excited.
I'm going to watch it the minute we're done with this.
He did it as a for hire job because he wanted to, you know, he was doing great music videos and wanted to break into film. So Alien and the fourth Alien was just terrible. And then you had Alien versus Predator. And it, you know, as if the monster were the most important thing and not Ripley.
I never saw Predator either.
Yeah. I'll tell you something though. Predator 2 had one of the great taglines of all time. He's in town with a few days to kill.
That's pretty good.
It's not as good as just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water.
In the water. All right. So for Michael,
which is one of the worst sequels ever made, Jaws 2.
Oh my God! And 3 and 4. Yep. No, and so we are. John and I are in agreement on 79 with Apocalypse Now, and Michael is very understandably staying with Manhattan. Anything but Kramer versus Kramer. Thank you very much. Although I did like Meryl Streep in it.
Yeah, Kramer versus Kramer. I think it's a good movie. I think it's a good movie. It's well acted, but what was the big deal?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Even Robert Benton has made better films, like Places in the Heart or The Late Show.
Yes.
No doubt.
Yeah, The Late Show I like a lot.
Yeah.
All right, so there's our look at our alternate Oscars for the 70s. That was fun. Next time we have to go obscure and do like the 30s or something like that. But
oh my God,
you know,
that would be interesting.
That would be fun.
That would be fun. There is a reason, though, to circle back that this decade was, in many ways, even considering the old studio system, in many ways, the 70s was the high point of American cinema. If you had to pick out a decade, because the innovation, the control that directors had, it was the artists ran the asylum. It was wonderful and unprecedented, and it's never happened since. And now we've come to the ultimate expression of money running the game, which is, you know, Disney. Yeah, I think 60% of the box office went to Disney last year. I mean, they own the Marvel films and the Star Wars films and the this and the that, and it's just become a complete. Fortunately, we have TV, because now a lot of times the best stuff in terms of visual storytelling is coming out on television.
Yeah. So
we do a blissfully short but painful one-person necrology, and of course we're talking about Sean Connery, who, you know, after the Bond films were over, after he did Diamonds Are Forever in '71, you know, confounded everybody's expectations by turning into a really, really important and good actor in his own curmudgeonly way. So my question to you guys, give me 2 or 3 of your favorite non-Bond Sean Connery performances.
Okay. One of them is from the 70s, which I was going to mention before, and it's a little scene movie. Sidney Lumet directed him in The Offense.
Right.
Which is about a police sergeant who kills out of rage, kills the suspect. And he's brilliant in it, and it's a film. It hardly got any play even in 1973. but it's a wonderful film. Trevor Howard is in it. Ian Bannon and Vivian Merchant plays his wife. It's if you can find it, I think you might be able to get it on Amazon Prime. I'm not sure, but it's excellent, excellent film. The other one, also by Sidney Lumet, which does appear on Turner Classic Movies from time to time, The Hill.
The Hill. I was trying to think of the name of it.
Yeah,
right.
The Hill
about
is
the
great.
drill sergeant. Yeah.
Who's in a not a prisoner of war camp. He's in a prison.
Boot camp. It's a prison. Right.
It's a prison. Yeah, it's where bad soldiers would go.
Right.
And
like Leavenworth.
Yeah, it's oh boy, I don't even know how that film got made, but 60s, beautiful black and white photography, and Connery is great in it.
He's great in Marnie too, which is the same year, right?
Yeah.
64.
Yeah.
64, the year before.
Yeah.
I just watched Marnie the other day. Yeah, he is great in it.
Yeah, it was on Thanksgiving night, wasn't it?
Perfect film to celebrate perfect film to celebrate family togetherness, Marnie.
I think so.
Yeah, well, they showed Rear Window Thanksgiving night. It was sort of like the middle of the night it was on.
It was 24 Hours of Hitchcock.
There's another Lumet movie that I liked a lot. It never shows with Sean Connery. I think he's very good in his Family Business with Dustin Hoffman and Matthew Broderick.
Matthew Broderick,
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
I remember that.
And then he did another one with Lumet that I like, the Anderson Tapes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun caper movie. But I gotta tell you, I didn't like him in The Untouchables.
I
didn't see what the big deal was with that performance or that film.
I thought he lent it a little bit of gravitas. I'm generally not a De Palma lover. There's usually one scene in every De Palma film that's worth seeing, and then the rest is garbage. I did like The Untouchables. I mentioned The Man Who Would Be King. They were gonna do it in the 50s with Humphrey Bogart and somebody else. And my God, I cannot imagine anyone but Sean Connery and Michael Caine in those.
Yeah, that's a wonderful film.
Just magnificent, and it's offensive in a lot of Kipling colonial ways, but when this scene when he sings at the end when he walks to his death singing the Minstrel Boy, oh my God, I was 10 years old and I cried like a baby. And I'm going to throw in as my third one, I'm throwing in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yes.
I thought he was utterly charming and lovely as Indiana's father.
It's the only Indiana Jones movie I liked. And I think it's because of him. I wasn't.
No, I like the first one in that one. That's my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't see the first one. I thought was okay. I didn't see what the big deal was. The second one I thought was awful.
Oh God! Yeah, the second one is it's pretty bad.
Kate Capshaw. What?
But the third one is delightful.
Well, the only reason I like the first one better than the third one is Karen Allen. The woman the woman who plays the German scientist in the third one, Alison Duty, she's so horrible. She's not as bad as Kate Capshaw is in the second one, but Karen Allen was so wonderful in the first one, and that's the only thing I could stand about the last one, about Crystal's Skull. It's such a horrifyingly bad movie, but Karen Allen shows up. It was terrible, but Karen Allen shows up looking very much her age, and it's like, oh my God, she hasn't had any work done. It's so nice to see you, Karen Allen.
I saw her in Law and Order, and she was excellent, and
love her.
Nothing done.
Plus, she is the actress that my wife looks the most like, so I also have a particular resemblance.
No. Yeah.
But I guess, are we all in agreement, though, that Sean Connery was the best James Bond?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and
you can make the argument that there were better Bond movies made, because actually during that era, the first Bond movies with Connery, really, most of those movies are pretty bad.
Well, the first three are great.
I still think Connery is the best Bond.
I would say the first three are great. Thunderball is a step down. You Only Live Twice is awful, and Diamonds Are Forever is just cheesy. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Yeah, my favorite in the entire series is From Russia with Love. That's a
I like
perfect.
that one,
There's
too.
Robert Shaw again.
That's the best
Lottie
one.
Lenya.
Yeah, that's the best one.
Lenya and the woman, the Bond woman, who's Daniela Bianchi, who was a model, is wonderful in it, and Pedro Armendariz as Karen Bay. God, I love that movie. That's what a Bond movie should be. No global domination, just a nice little nasty fight on a train between spies. And I like Craig almost as much. I don't like the Brosnan.
No.
I like because I grew up reading the Fleming books, and so Fleming's Bond is very dark, almost to the point of being sociopathic. And that's Craig. That certainly is Connery, and to a lesser extent is Tim Dalton. I kind of like the two Dalton Bonds, but I'm not a huge fan of the Brosnans or the Moores. Although Roger Moore
the
was.
The Moore ones are bad.
The
Moore ones are bad.
It's just a joke. It's like, why
The
bother?
only
they're kind of they're campy.
Yeah.
Except for Your Eyes Only, which sort of ditched the gadgets and the effects and went back to just a story where he keeps getting knocked around by people like in the good old days. And one of my favorite Bond girls, Carol Bouquet, you were talking about the Buñuel film, Michael, she's in that. And, I never say no to a woman with a crossbow. So I check out For Your Eyes Only. That's my favorite of the Moore Bonds. But yeah, Sean Connery, no one like him. And plus, Daryl Hammond imitating him on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, that was genius.
Christ of All right, months
very funny.
Months that end in Tober. What is Feb-Tober? Awesome. Sean Connery left a real footprint, and he will be missed. All right, so we are done with episode 26. For our next episode, we've been focusing almost exclusively on American film for the last few episodes. We're heading east. We're going to Asia, and we haven't exactly decided where our focus is going to be, but a lot of the best films these days, and going back a long way, have come from that part of the world. And, all of a sudden, last year when Parasite won Best Picture, everyone was like, oh my God, there's a film industry in South Korea. Like, yeah, for about 100 years. So, well, it was the same thing in 1950 when Rashomon hit the festivals, and everyone's like, wow, Japan has a film industry? It's like, yeah, for about 50 years before that. So we're gonna be heading east and looking at that. So be sure to watch Mank. And speaking of Asian, in this case, Asian American directors, I'm trying to figure out a way to see Nomadland. Chloe Zhao's film, which is Nomadland by Chloe Zhao with Francis McDormand.
Oh, yeah, I want to see that.
I really want to see. It's not streaming anywhere. Lincoln Center was streaming it, for a limited audience, and it sold out in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's possible I might get a copy of it for the SAG screening.
Oh, if you do, I'm really dying.
I'll let you know if I get one.
And I'm pleased, and I'm very excited about Mank. It's Fincher. It's the story of. But the thing that interests me is that it's not only about Kane. I had forgotten the fact that Upton Sinclair, the muckraking journalist, had run for governor in California.
Run for governor.
And all of Hollywood gathered its anti-union strength to make sure he didn't win. Yeah. So I'm fascinated by that. And also I just
finished a biography on Herman and Joseph L. Mankiewicz. It was pretty scholarly, but it was good.
Interesting character. And plus, I think, I don't know if there's anything in this world that Gary Oldman can't do. So I'm looking forward to that. So
me too.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us again. Remember, as always, that Vintage Sand is a 5 9s and a 4 production. Want to thank Melissa for her technical help, Mama Sue for the use of the hall, and Gabby for our cool-ass logo. Please recall that we are now available on all the big formats, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on SoundCloud. We also have a website cleverly titled www.vintagesand.com. Michael's putting his list up there, so everyone's got to go to the website and check it out. All right?
25 films from 1971 that were better than The French Connection.
So, again, thank you all for listening and for your feedback, and happy watching. Wash your hands, wear a mask, and stay the hell indoors. And hopefully somewhere indoors, your favorite films will always be streaming.